That's
All right. We're live, ladies and germs. And I'm not going to forget to start off with Media after that. Better not. Okay. Let's do this.
A minuscule portion of the Daily Tech News Show was brought to you by me, because I went to patreon.com/acedetect and donated $1 a month to a podcast that I really enjoy. Won't you join me?
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, October 27th, 2015. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Mr. Eric Franklin, managing editor of CNET Reviews and man about the gaming universe. How's it going, Eric?
Yeah, I don't know if I would claim to be the man about the gaming universe, but I'm doing okay.
You're a man about the gaming universe.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, a man.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
We're just
Barely
men.
man.
We're just humans.
Yeah.
We don't claim to be more. But we are going to talk about Halo 5 Guardians and the decision of 343 Industries to prioritize 60 frames per second above all else. If your game console is about to explode, they don't care as long as they can maintain 60 frames per second.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna get into that. There was a really good article about it from Digital Foundry. But let's start off with some headlines. This isn't necessarily big news except for you folks who like to listen to podcasts and us folks who like to make podcasts, but Google Play Music has added a podcast section. Several of you were mentioning this on Twitter. Thank you for the heads up. Daily Tech News Show has been submitted, and let me reload the page right now. We are currently pending approval. But I don't think it's launched yet for people to subscribe anyway. But yeah, you'll be able to get podcasts in Google Play Music soon. Now, depending on what news outlet you looked at, Europe either passed net neutrality rules or voted against net neutrality rules. It was kind of confusing the way people reported it based on their own particular biases. European Parliament did kind of do both. The MEPs voted to pass EU-wide net neutrality rules to come into force April 30th, 2016. What they did not do, and what those other headlines are referring to, was pass any of the amendments that are meant to close perceived loopholes or clarify vague language. ISPs in Europe will soon be free to offer specialized services, but they're not well defined. Zero-rate other services manage traffic due to impending congestion. That means congestion that hasn't happened yet. And discriminate based on a class of data. And one of the objections there is that encrypted data is a class, whether it's got video or email, because you can't tell what's in it because it's encrypted. Parliament also voted to end mobile roaming charges within the EU by mid-2017. Now, here's the key, Eric. They couldn't pass any of those amendments on net neutrality because that would hurt the finances of companies and prevent them from innovating. But they did change the ability to charge for mobile roaming because they didn't care if that would affect the ability to charge and innovate and cost money. They wanted to be able to roam anywhere in Europe without having to pay extra.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that isn't coming till mid-2017. As soon as I read that story, my first thought was like, if you're going to announce that, why not just do it now? You know?
Well, and they're going to phase it in. I guess that is the one sop they gave to the carriers is there will be a rate cut coming soon, and then they'll step down until eventually there's no roaming charges at all.
Why do you think they take that step approach then instead of all across the board, just do it?
Because the carriers whined and screamed.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was hoping you would, agree with what my...
They might not have whined, but I bet a couple of them screamed.
I bet they whined.
Yeah, they might have whined. Cisco announced it will pay $452.5 million to acquire the security company Lancope. TechCrunch reports Lancope uses behavior analytics, threat visibility, and security intelligence to recognize suspicious and sometimes malicious activity on enterprise networks. Lancope will become part of the Cisco Security Business Group. Cisco and HP have both been among its clients, but HP has been divesting itself of security companies, and Cisco's picking some up. Which means that I don't know. I go back and forth whether I think HP would be allowed to contract Lancope as a third party in one of their enterprise offerings, because HP is going to be competing with Cisco for business, but Cisco would then get more business, so it'd be interesting to see. Verizon announced the Motorola Droid Turbo 2 featuring Turbo Shatter Shield technology today. Every time I think I'm not going to report on a phone, they do something that's just interesting enough.
Yeah.
To get me to mention it. Verizon demonstrated the 5.4-inch screen's resilience by dropping the phone onto a concrete block multiple times. The anti-shatter screen uses multiple layers of material to flex and absorb and the shock impact rather than crack. The Droid Turbo 2 will be available October 29th at a $26 a month rate for the 32 gig model and $30 a month for the 64 gig model on a 24-month plan.
Yeah,
it's the phone for Patrick Norton, Eric.
Well, it's interesting because you said they dropped the phone onto a concrete block, and my first thought was like, why not drop the concrete block onto the phone? Let's actually, be a little daring out here. We're probably going to be getting this phone pretty soon. I'm trying to come up with ideas of how to actually test that, and the only thing I can think of is just like, getting a sledgehammer or something like that, and just start tapping on it, just harder and harder and see how much it can take.
Oh yeah, no, you want to build up. That's a great idea. Like start with a few taps, and then get harder and harder and harder. And if it doesn't crack, then you drop the concrete block on it. That's your final bit.
I think that was a good ending to that idea. Thank you very much.
MasterCard announced a new program today to allow you to pay with more objects than just a credit card or even your phone. GM has worked with them to develop a car key fob that integrates payments. Ringly has a smart ring. NYMI offers a wristband. It's like a fitness tracker, but also has payment integration. Designer Adam Selman is going to help make some fashion accessories that can act as credit cards. Capital One cards are supported to begin with. They do want to expand it to more MasterCards. MasterCard's aiming to launch the system in the U.S. next year. Pay with everything. Why not? To me, it's less about that. Like that's not the hard part. Figuring out how to integrate payment into a ring. Motorola was experimenting with that when they were part of Google years ago. That's not the problem. It's getting the payment system in place. Like which system is this going to work with that will allow me to do it? Because Apple Pay is great when I'm at a place where I can use it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the great things about I think Samsung Pay is that it just works as long as you have Bank of America. It just works everywhere. It works.
Yeah, because it does emulates the card swipe.
Yeah, exactly. And I use Apple Pay when I'm at Walgreens or there's this local grocery store I go to. But other than that, I haven't really used it. So.
Yeah, see, I've got a CVS near me, and they're notoriously one of the holdouts on Apple Pay. So. HTC clarified that the promotional price of the HTC One A9 in the U.S. will go up from $399 to $499 at 12:01 a.m. So don't get stuck outside the door at midnight on November 7th. Android Central points out the A9 sells for the rough equivalent of $725 in Europe. So, wow, that's a price difference. HTC's sales regions are given the freedom to set their own prices and promotions, hence the big gap there. I guess they're eating the cost.
I guess so, but, I mean, it looks like they're not eating as much as they thought they were going to eat before. Because I remember when that price was first talked about, the $399 price, it was like, oh my God, that's incredible, that's great. And then they push it up by $100. It's a little disappointing.
Yeah, and also that was one of the biggest features of the phone, frankly, was that cheap price. At least in the U.S. it was.
Yeah, for sure.
John Z776 sent us the story of a statue of Vladimir Lenin in Odessa, Ukraine, that has been converted into a statue of Darth Vader with a Wi-Fi hotspot under the helmet. Artist Alexander Milov covered the statue's face with Darth Vader's mask and transformed the coat into Vader's cape using a titanium alloy. Ukraine's parliament passed a bill last April removing some communist monuments and place names. So this is government-sanctioned Darth Vader with a Wi-Fi hotspot.
That's hilarious. I mean, how long before some dictator just comes out dressed as Darth Vader? Seriously. Because I feel like this pop culture is influencing our decisions so much these days that that's going to happen at some point.
You don't know the power of 802.11 AC.
That's nicely done.
That's what I want to know is actually what kind of Wi-Fi? Who's it connected to? Is this government? I mean, I'm not connected to Darth Vader's hotspot without knowing who's behind it.
Well, not that you know of.
Yeah. JSN Phil and Motang both wanted us to mention that Pandora co-creator Tom Conrad told the world his discovery that Siri won't answer questions about music charts if you don't subscribe to Apple Music. Same thing happened to me. I tried it. When you ask Siri, what is the most popular song in the U.S. today, Siri apologizes that she can't look up music charts because you're not subscribed to Apple Music.
Siri forgot she's connected to the internet? I mean...
Siri, what is the most popular song in the U.S. today? Let's see what she says.
Sorry, Tom. I can't look up the music charts for you. You don't seem to be subscribed to Apple Music.
Come on, Siri. It's a bogus answer right there.
Now, I think this is not a conscious decision. I don't think they're blocking people. I think there are a set of answers that are tied into Apple Music, like very rationally, like play my Apple Music playlist, and then Siri says, hey, I'm sorry, you're not a subscriber to Apple Music. I can't do that, which would make sense. It just happens to be that the charts is in that pathway, so they just need to make the charts move out of that pathway.
You think they will?
No. That's the other thing about Apple is they may not have done this on purpose, but they also don't care.
Probably.
Microsoft executive Julie Larson-Green will take over management of Microsoft Office while retaining her current duties as Chief Experience Officer for Microsoft Services Group. According to Recode, Kirk Konigsbauer, the former head of Office, will move into CMO Chris Caposella's marketing group. Julie Larson-Green kind of cut her teeth at Microsoft working in the Office and Windows group, was the first woman to head the Windows engineering group. So good stuff there. Good move for her. Congratulations. TechCrunch reports several European tech companies have formed a new lobby group called the European Technology Alliance. To become a member, a company must be European in origin or perceived to be a European company. You're just so Euro. I always thought you were a European company. The 25 initial members include Spotify and SwiftKey, among others. Group's founder and president is Skype co-founder and Atomico founder, CEO Nicholas Zenstrom. So in the wake of losing safe harbor and the net neutrality vote, it seems like tech companies in Europe are like, we should probably lobby.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad decision.
Business Insider reports that Facebook is launching a new initiative called 2G Tuesdays. Every Tuesday morning, employees will see a prompt at the top of their newsfeed asking if they would like to experience a slow connection for an hour. Absolutely. Engineering director Tom Allison and his team have been reworking Facebook's newsfeed to optimize it for slower networks often found in emerging markets. 2G Tuesdays is meant to let employees experience what those networks actually feel like in practice without having to actually travel to places like India or Africa.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Would you do it? Do you think you'd do it?
I mean, I try it just to see. I mean, look, I'm old enough to have lived through slow connections back in the early 2000s, late 90s. So I don't know if I really need to experience that again. That was compared to today. I mean, we all know what.
I remember Edge, which is fast, which is a faster 2G. I'll grant you, but yeah, slow enough that I don't really need to go back either. But no, I actually, in all seriousness, think this is a good move to sort of spread that awareness. If you really are trying to design a product for areas that rely on this as their fastest option, it's good to let people know what that actually means in practice.
For sure.
Twitter announced revenue of $569.2 million and adjusted earnings per share of 10 cents. That beat expectations. They expected $559.6 million and only 5 cents a share. But the big number everybody cares about is users. Twitter announced 320 million monthly active users. That's up from 284 million a year ago and 316 million last month. But it's not bad enough to be concerning. It's also not good enough to get really excited about. On the revenue side, 86% of Twitter's revenue came from mobile, so there's that. I think the stock market is not excited about this. They're sort of like, oh, really? That's all you got? 320 million? Yeah. They want to see more dramatic growth.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's like, what, 10%, 15% growth or something? Yeah.
Apple also announced its quarterly earnings. Company reported quarterly revenue of $51.5 billion. Remember, I just mentioned Twitter had 569 million. Apple has $51.5 billion. Earnings per share of $1.96. That beat expectations of earnings per share of $1.88. on $51.11 billion. The company sold 48.04 million iPhones in the fourth quarter, as well as 9.883 million iPads. International sales accounted for 62% of the quarter's revenue. Revenue from other products, that's the Apple Watch, Apple TV, any hi-fis left laying around, and Apple Music was $3.05 billion. Also Beats, headphones, stuff like that. Revenue from services, Apple Music is not in that. Apple Music is in services, which includes iTunes and Apple Pay. That was $5.09 billion. Apple CEO Tim Cook said fiscal 2015 was Apple's most successful year ever. Take that, people who compare me to previous CEOs. Like John Scully. No. So it seems like a pretty decent quarter for Apple, but the spin will begin now. We'll get the spin from the stock market, and then we'll get the spin from Tim Cook in the earnings call.
Sure.
And that, my friends, are the headlines. As you noticed, we had a few in there that I credited to folks on the subreddit, but the subreddit really does help me take into account the broad swath of stuff that we cover. So do let us know what you want us to cover at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. That there is the headlines. All right, let's talk about this Digital Foundry article over at Eurogamer.net. Good in-depth review of Halo 5 Guardians.
Not surprising. Those guys do an amazing job with every game they take on, for sure.
The interesting thing was this was 343 Industries' first big test since taking over Halo from Bungie. It's not their first product, but this is the one that everybody's looking at like, okay, can they get it right?
Yeah, from the ground up, brand new game, new hardware, so yeah.
And yeah, first one on the Xbox One, right?
Yeah.
First one on the this gen. Can we call them this gen consoles?
I think we can now.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
They prioritize 60 frames per second across the entire game. And Digital Foundry does a great job. They have an excellent video, if you don't have time to read the whole article, explaining what that means. But it does mean some weird stuff. You get a lot of pop-in effects. You can like lean in and look at a flame, and those kind of alpha effects sometimes disappear when you lean in because they're sacrificing everything else for performance for 60 frames per second. Now you played Halo 5 last night.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
I gotta say, it felt great. Now, when we first started, I played with a friend of mine last night, and when we first started playing, we were watching the cutscene. Now the cutscene was awesome, but it was not 60 frames per second. It was about 30 frames per second, but it was amazing and really well done. It felt like 343 was saying, remember how you didn't make that Halo movie? Well, this is what you're missing, because it was great. But then when we actually started controlling the game, it was 60 frames per second, and what it really kind of made clear to me was that this was the first Halo game for me that I actually felt like a 9-foot-tall super soldier. And I feel like the 60 frames per second of that, aspect of that, and like the speed in which you can move, and the jumping, and like you're doing these dashes, and you're punching down walls and stuff like that, and it all looks really smooth. All of that, 6 frames per second contributed to that feeling of being like this, roided up super soldier, which is, I don't think any other Halo game is really giving me that feeling. So I really enjoyed it a lot.
So for those who don't maybe understand, and gamers get this, I think, intrinsically, but for those who may be trying to understand this from the outside, the frame rate is your ability to feel like you and the character are the same, right? Everything else is the looks. Sure.
So there's graphics, there's textures, there's like the kind of the prettiness of the game, and then there's the frame rate, just the smoothness of the movement, really. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. I mean, if you ever played like an old, I guess I call them old now, but I guess they are old, like 90s Sega arcade games, like pretty much all of those games were running at 60 frames per second. And a lot of people can't tell the difference, but I think when you see them side by side, a 30 frames per second game and a 60 frames per second game, you can totally tell the difference, because a lot of those Sega games were 60 frames per second, and I feel like they contributed to those games being better games overall.
Well, and it's the performance, right? It's the responsiveness. Like you get, I mean, you're still getting one-to-one action, but you feel like it's doing exactly what you tell it to do, right?
There's not that slight delay that your brain is kind of picking up, but you're consciously maybe not picking up. but there's a little disconnect there. With 60 frames per second, you definitely feel like I'm doing this movement and it's happening right now.
Now, the trade-off here, though, is that, the mountains in the distance look fuzzy until suddenly they just pop into clarity because, again, what they're doing here is dynamic resolution scaling. So sometimes, at least according to Digital Foundry, they would get a different X and Y value randomly. They're controlling each of those resolution values randomly to keep 60 frames per second up. They said the lowest they ever detected was 1152 by 810, which is still better than a 720p image, but you basically don't get a 1080p image out of this. And that also means that weird things happen, like fire disappearing and all of that. So that didn't bother you. The weirdness of like maybe another character is operating a little jerky off to the side didn't matter to you as long as you were smooth.
So I can't say that. It definitely mattered that I was smooth and that contributed to my enjoyment of the game, but I did notice some weirdness. And I hadn't read this article before I played last night, so I didn't notice like people kind of popping in and out of view or disappearing. Like, okay, that must just be a glitch or something like that. But when you're playing, the thing about playing a great game is that after a while you start to forget about that stuff. You start to forget about what's going on in the background, unless you need to shoot someone way in the background or something like that. So the game is really, controls really well. It's really fun. Definitely playing with other people is really fun. So I kind of forgot about the glitches. My brain was kind of half noticing. You know what I mean?
It feels like the fog of war. Yeah, and this is totally just excusing it, but you could write it up to the fact that like, hey, I'm in the middle of a battle. Yeah. Our brains are definitely selective in what we see in those situations anyway.
Yeah.
So it kind of could be chalked up to that as an experience if you wanted to. Sure.
That's the my wrestling nerds will understand. That's the kayfabe reason for that.
So in the end, okay, you've experienced this once, right? This isn't definitive. But to oversimplify it, it's do you care about looks or performance? And if you had to choose, now that you've run through it, which do you think is the right priority? I mean, and granted, let's just be clear, they won't always have to make these trade-offs, right? Part of the problem is that the Xbox One has certain hardware parameters that lock them down, and they cannot achieve 60 frames per second and 1080p all the time on that hardware, so they had to pick one. Do you think do you like the one they picked?
I do. Like I said, I feel like it really does contribute to my enjoyment of the game because that smooth movement makes me feel like a Spartan, makes me feel like this badass super soldier. But it depends on the game, really. Beyond Halo 5, I think if you're playing a fighting game or maybe a racing game or a first-person shooter, I think it matters more with those games. In other games, it may not matter that much. 30 frames per second is totally fine if you're doing some kind of like Hearthstone or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, if the animations pile up in Hearthstone, that can be a problem. But yeah, most of the time.
Yeah, but those never stop you from playing the game effectively. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Because it's a strategy game.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Anyway, again, if you're interested in this sort of thing at all, highly recommend going over to Eurogamer.net and reading the Digital Foundry write-up of this. They say it's clear that hitting 1080p while maintaining 60 frames per second would not have been possible in Halo 5, but rather than simply opting to render at a lower resolution across the board, 343 has implemented one of the most impressive dynamic resolution scaling systems we've seen to date. So they are, in fact, saying what 343 did was try to achieve 60 frames per second and still keep things looking as good as possible, rather than just saying, we'll do a 720p game. At least
overall, I think the game looks great, and I didn't really notice the trade-off. It felt smooth, it looked great, so I was happy.
All right, let's get to our pick of the day, a pick that does not care about frame rate at all. It's from Nick. He'd like to let the audience know that if you're wanting to play Crossy Road on a bigger screen than an iPhone, there's a way that doesn't involve shelling out for the Apple TV 4. If you have a Windows 10 PC, you can get a free Windows Phone version of Crossy Road that runs on the PC version of Windows 10. Just search for it in Windows 10 App Store and you will find it. It's an official port done by Yodo One Ltd. The original dev is, of course, Hipster Whale. Yodo One also did an official Android port of Crossy Road as well. So there you go. If you're like, first-person shooter's too much for me, just want to take a chicken through some traffic, now you can.
Yes.
Send your picks to us, folk. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find my picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. A few emails here. Rusty liked our discussion yesterday about social media and the news, and he was saying, while listening, I kept thinking about Twitter's overtures to developers last week. Jack Dorsey made a big plea to Twitter developers saying, look, we've messed up in the past. We want to repair this relationship. Rusty says, I hope we get back to the happy days of innovation and iteration with Twitter as the platform. And doing that for hyperlocal news and information seems like a great idea to me. With the right APIs, a savvy news organization could create something much more than the current trending hashtag and list-based stuff we have today. I like it, Rusty. I've always liked the idea of Twitter being more open about its API, but it seems to have been going the other direction. Dorsey may change that now that he's in charge. 37-year-old Isaac Johnson wrote in to say he is sold on YouTube because of 4 factors. Here's the 4-factor test for a 37-year-old Isaac Johnson wanting YouTube Red and paying $10 a month for it. First, training videos. He says, go to any tech company. If you wander the hallways, you'll know lots of developers stay up on their game by watching YouTube training videos, so that's important to him. The ability to pull up a specific song and not have to sit through an ad to watch it. You're just like, I got the song in my head, I want to play it. He says, it's MTV for the 2000s. At home, if my daughters want to dance about the living room, it's the Vivo channel or just hashtag popular music videos from YouTube. And finally, he calls it the functional equivalent of Spotify/Pandora. I spend at least half my time music-wise on 8tracks.com, YouTube, and I listen to YouTube music in the car. I need something quick to entertain the kids and don't want to fart about skipping lullabies in the toddler station on Pandora, he says. So there you go. He's a big fan of YouTube Red, and he's not in that young demo. I guess that's what I was trying to say is like the young demo is what YouTube Originals is after, but there are these other things that might appeal to other demos.
Yeah, I have to say I really appreciate Isaac's 4 things to look for. It seems more like 2 things, though. It seems like music and training videos.
Yeah, he did break music up into 3 different parts. That's a good point. Simon wrote into his member of parliament after hearing the court case saying that UK citizens did not have the right to rip MP3s from a CD. And so he got an email back. John Whittingdale, the minister in charge of the Ministry of Culture, Media and Sport, said that 1, all MP3s ripped from a CD in the UK, regardless of when they are ripped, are deemed an infringement of copyright, although the government is not aware of any copyright holder prosecuting any individual for this act. Wink, wink. I added the winks. Number 2, Amazon's auto rips are perfectly legal. That's when you buy a CD at Amazon, but you get the MP3s added to your Amazon Music account as a freebie. Number 3, it is legal to sell software to rip CDs as it could be used for non-copyright infringing purposes. So Simon thought we might like to see the official position of the UK on this. Well done. Thank you, Simon. And then from Estonia, T2T2, the man who does so many things, including making sure our chat room runs clean, hosting it, said, he also says, I swear I don't work in Estonia's PR department. On this Friday's show, Swift ID was mentioned as a way to authenticate users using the phone to confirm logins. He says, as a continuation from a previous Friday's email on ID cards, Estonia has been doing mobile ID since 2007. In addition to using ID cards, it is possible to get a special SIM card from a phone carrier. Then it can be used in the same way as a normal ID card. Log into banks, government sites, sign documents, vote in elections by entering the appropriate PIN card, something you have, a SIM, something you know, the PIN, 2-factor authentication. Also, it can be used to cross-device login, enter info on the computer, confirm it on the phone. And as I mentioned, it being available since 2007, before the release of the first iPhone and way before the first iPhone in Estonia. It also works on non-smartphones, which is important, especially in Eastern Europe. In related news, Japan will be launching their ID card system called My Number National ID in January 2016 that is based on the system that was developed in Estonia.
You know, how do you feel about, I know this just kind of...
Moving to Estonia? Is that what?
Yeah, I was thinking of moving there, yeah. No, how do you feel about, like, internet voting in elections?
I think it could be done, right? I mean, when you think about the system we have now, especially in most states in the United States, you don't even have to show your ID card, or it's illegal for them to ask you for an ID card.
Yeah.
And the system we have for voter registration here, I feel like we could probably come up with some system, given that and given the fact that we can do banking, and you can make all the jokes you want about banks getting hacked because they do get hacked. We do function as a society with online banking in place. I feel like it could happen. And Estonia is a great example of one country who has done it. Like e-voting is the norm there now.
Yeah. They probably think we're some kind of ass backwards country. In fact,
They do.
I kind of feel that way. It feels like it's long overdue to me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there are situations in Estonia and other things they have done technologically that make it easier to do it.
Sure.
It's not like you could just take their system, plop it down in the U.S. and it would work right away. You'd have to adapt it. But Japan has done that with this ID system. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty cool. It does kind of make me wish we had all of that here as well. Mm-hmm. Thank you, T2T2. And thank you, Eric Franklin, for joining us, man. This was fantastic, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was fun, especially I love talking about frame rates and stuff like that, man. So that's fun.
If anyone was wondering where Patrick Beja was, because it is, in fact, a Tuesday, he's at the Games event in Paris. Sony had a lot of announcements for dates for their games there and all of that, and he will be on the show with Scott Johnson tomorrow. But yeah, we should have you back, talk some gaming with Patrick. And Patrick should get you on Pixels, man.
Yeah.
Not to volunteer, not to start booking him, but it was a really good conversation with you today.
That was fun.
Twitter.com/Nidopal, Nidopal. And of course, you can follow Eric's fine works at cnet.com. Anything in particular to let folks know about?
For me, no, I don't get to write that much these days because I don't really have time. But I think the next big review we have coming up is the LG V10, so look for that.
With the little tiny second screen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you to our patrons, dailytechnewsshow.com/support. If you are willing to help the show, our next milestone goal, should we get there, is to have a 6th day of Daily Tech News Show hosted by Peter Wells in Australia. So getting us closer to actually being daily, a Monday show for people in Australia, a Sunday show for people in the Western Hemisphere, our hemisphere over here, and an international perspective. So if that sounds good to you, and you're not already supporting the show, head on over to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. It's 512-593-2459. Listen to the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com. Our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Patrick Beja and Scott Johnson. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Yes.
Yay.
I hadn't heard that sign off yet. Who did that?
Which one? Which part?
The laughing part.
Oh, that's Justin Robert Young and Brian Brushwood.
Okay. That's good.
Brian is the laughing part.
Gotcha.
You went to the
Thanks for having me, guys.
That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being on, man. That was really good.
It was fun.
As always.
Cool. Good show.
Something that I would never have talked about on my own, but I felt like we did a great job talking about it. So
I think, yeah, you did a great job explaining it. And, yeah, luckily I had some experience from last night.
No, that's perfect. Perfect team up.
Yeah.
So we have some really spectacular titles. Eric, if you have to run, if you're on the clock, we're just going to hang around and do our thing.
Okay, yeah, I do.
No worries.
Yeah, I got some
It's
stuff.
okay. We'll get you back.
Tell everyone who remembers who I am hello.
That's pretty much everybody.
Oh,
So
please.
I will.
It's not everybody. All right, man.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
So really, Darth Vader brings out the poetry in our chat room because we have, I find your lack of Wi-Fi disturbing.
Nice.
There's roam where EU wants to, or want to, singular.
Oh, man. You guys are killing me today. These are good.
Yeah. Schmoke Schmoogle, play DTNS, which obviously there's a correct way that's said. And my favorite, this is too long, but connect to me, and we can rule the internet as father and son.
Connect to me, and we can rule the internet as client and server.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Minor edit.
Say hello to my 60 frames per second.
Nice. Hey, that's the best on-topic one for the main discussion, too.
Yeah.
Say hello to my 60 FPS.
Luke, I am your wife, father. Lennon, I know. That is amazing. Lennon, I am your statue.
Okay, yeah.
Come to the Wi-Fi side.
Come to the Wi-Fi side.
Oh. What are you so excited about?
My Wi-Fi went dark side.
Darth Vader's hotspot. No, this is great. Do you want to connect to Darth Vader's hotspot?
You don't know the password.
Wi-Fi.
I like Rome where you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty. I just like the B-52s.
Yeah, of course. Who doesn't?
Some people.
It is technically Rome if you want to.
Rome,
Whatever.
if you want to.
But I think it still works.
Around the world. I don't even remember that guy's name who does nothing but talk.
Fred?
Is that it? I don't
His name
even
is Fred.
remember.
It says 15 miles, that guy, right?
Love Shack!
That's Fred.
Sorry. It's so disturbing to hear at any point.
It's weird, but every time I think of that band, I think of Kate Patella.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I just that's a very beach Babylon.
Sure, I can see that. I always think of Rock Lobster and the 1986 state championship Greenville Comets women's basketball team.
Because they were lobsters?
No,
Oh.
they were not lobsters, but that was their like psych up song before they played.
Roam around the world.
Yeah, that was and so we had to learn how to play Rock Lobster because the JJT combo that I played drums for played at all the home games in between,
nice.
Like during timeouts and stuff.
You should every time you do a meet and greet, you should just have a drum set with you now.
I can't play. I tried playing at Scott Johnson's during their Spectacular like 4 or 5 years ago. So bad.
It's really hard if you've done it for a while and then stop for a very long while. It's really hard to pick back up.
Yeah.
Especially like any instrument that requires muscle. Well, actually, all instruments require muscle memory. It totally goes away.
Say hello to my 60 FPS. I'm going to go with that.
That is elegant.
It hurts me. I'll just be honest. It hurts me a little to leave some of these others behind because they're so good.
Mm-hmm.
But we got an on-topic one that is also so good. So there you go. Say hello to my 60 frames per second.
I mean, it's a very interesting topic. I mean, if you broadened it out more, you're wondering, like, well, did Microsoft really make the right decision in investing all the money into the Kinect, into developing that? Because they had to carve out silicon space on the chip for that, and so they had to cut into the GPU budget for it.
Right, and at this point, could they have integrated the Kinect into the system, even without games, right? Yeah. In so many other ways, with voice command and everything. Like, could they even save that silicon space anymore? I don't know that they could.
Well, I mean, they've done some minor tweaks that basically they freed up, or they quote unquote freed up. They basically told developers you can get 10 to 15% more CPU speed, but I mean, ultimately, they just need a killer app for the Kinect to justify why they went in that direction.
I know, Ellie. I know.
Right?
A baby program.
Well put.
That actually, I've always wondered that because the Xbox allows you to watch movies or TV in a picture-in-picture mode. It'd be great if you could have a viewing buddy that was your Kinect, and it would just totally be like Hal or whatever, or like Cortana, I guess. And you just hit it up. It's like, hey, who's that actor? Or how come he looks familiar?
That's what Siri is supposed to be able to do.
It would be great if they could make Cortana do that, because then you could just watch.
I think Cortana can do that, actually.
Really? Awesome. You know so much for...
More of a fan of Alexa.
Let's set off all the voice assistants.
Well, no, I mean, like, I wonder if anyone's done that yet. Have all the voice assistants kind of converse with each other.
Yeah, they have.
I've only seen the Siri and Siri, but I haven't seen like.
There's another one, and I can't remember who it's. It's Siri and somebody else. I want to say it's Google, but.
The Turing test.
Can Ellie pass the Turing test?
I'm picking you up. I'm picking you up.
Yeah, I feel like everything we've just said has happened. Like, I feel like I know there are voice assistants on set-top boxes that can identify, like, you can say, who is that? And it'll say. I'm pretty sure it's Siri in the new Apple TV.
It'd be kind of cool. If Netflix can integrate... Oh, no, I guess they can.
Yeah, it probably only works with iTunes videos, though. Because somewhere it has to be coded. It's not doing facial recognition.
A cool app would be 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, and then every time there's a Kevin Bacon movie or a cameo, suddenly it gives you the 6 degrees of how...
I bet that exists, too. How can that not exist?
But I mean, like, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to fix it. You just... It automatically
just set it on. Let it run.
Like, oh, Kevin Bacon. I wonder if Kevin Bacon is now considered a carcinogen.
I am confirmed to attend the Walking Dead fireside chat tomorrow evening.
Nice.
Nice.
Do you watch that show a lot?
I watch it every week. I cannot speak about this week's show.
I know.
That's the other one I kind of started and fell off the viewing train.
Yeah, you can get back on now. There was a time when I did not fall off the viewing train, but lots of other people with better taste than me did. But they have recovered from that time.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular now, especially this season.
I think this season is the best yet.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean,
is this the 4th?
Sixth, right? 6th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just keep to my Once Upon a Time.
I watch that too.
Yeah.
That's gotten much better this year.
Yes.
I think it's because it's kind of getting a little like gritty, not just kind of.
Well, they gave. Well, I shouldn't say that. Spoiler, but also they stopped trying to wedge in particular properties.
Yes, that was kind of obnoxious. Although it's kind of cool when they do it well.
Yeah, and they've done it well. In fact, this year's Brave Girl is a little bit of that, but it works. The way they're doing it works. I feel like the Frozen stuff just...
I'm waiting for Jungle Book.
It left me cold, bro.
I loved the Frozen. That was the one season I watched consistently.
What, the Frozen one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I liked the people they got to play the Frozen characters. I just didn't feel like the stories meshed.
Yeah. No, you're right. I feel that way about every single episode of Once Upon a Time.
I feel like
the only question is,
I feel like that is their biggest problem.
Overwhelm the flaws in what I think the network has made the show do, and I phrase that very carefully for a reason.
Sure.
It is. You definitely feel the heavy hand of Disney.
Yeah.
That show.
But I do feel like this is the strongest season as far as meshing.
I really like. I really like how the characters developed over time. It wasn't just like, this person's always going to be this way and this person's always going to be that way because that's the way they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although really, for the first couple of seasons, it just felt like jilted women. not it just felt like that was kind of the meme they were on.
Mm-hmm.
That all these women were somehow wronged by someone close to them.
It's true to life, Roger.
You need to know that.
One of my friends just posted on Facebook a job as the social media engagement strategist for Star Wars.
Are we losing you, Jenny? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I would never, ever in a million years want that job, but I just wanted to think for a second about what that job would be like.
Well, that's what Bonnie Burton used to do.
Right.
I mean, that is a sliver of everything she did there, but...
So now they're slivering it off and giving it to someone else. But, like, the idea of the coordination involved in that job, I think would outweigh the awesomeness of it.
Whoever's doing the Instagram account currently has been doing a pretty damn good job, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I hope that person... I hope this doesn't mean that person's leaving. I
know. Well, no. All right. Would you like to hear about the job? And all that it entails?
I mean, I'll interview.
It's Roger. It's in San Francisco. Do you want to go be the social engagement strategist for Star Wars?
No, because I talked to Bonnie about a similar position, and she explained...
it was perhaps not...
issues. Not so much with the company, but with personalities. All
right. Yeah.
Not a mesh. Speaking of meshing.
This is... Let's just all think about ourselves in this job for a second while not actually taking it. Social media strategy, content planning, story ideation, content curation, and direct fan communication for the Star Wars franchise social channels. This is the part that sounds like a nightmare. This person worked closely with stakeholders across the Lucasfilm digital team and Disney Interactive to develop social content that supports brand building and marketing initiatives. Oh.
That doesn't sound like conflict beyond management at all.
Yeah. That sounds like trying to run an empire from Coruscant, is what it sounds like.
Remember when you had to pick between mommy or daddy in an argument?
Yeah.
Imagine you had 15 mommies and daddies.
I do. My thing would be simple. It was like, did J.J. Abrams agree with this? I agree with this. That would be it.
Yeah, but see, that's why you and I shouldn't have that job.
Do that job, I know.
Hey, guess what? Daily Tech News Show is live in the Google Play Music podcasting store.
That was fast.
Yeah, I was pretty fast.
Do that. Wait,
maybe they heard me say still pending during the show.
Nobody watches this show. Thank you, whoever that was.
Yes, well done. Good job.
Very kind. We appreciate it.
Okay, what does that mean though? Can we send people to it? Does it give me a link?
Does it have a link? I'm going to look in the Google. It may not be indexed yet, right?
It does. It also says missing 4 enclosures because FeedBurner still shows the non-podcasting posts, which by the way, FeedBurner owned by Google. Ha, hilarious.
Yeah, I
No,
know.
that's just the feed. Share this account? No, I don't. I could share the account. Actually, I probably will do that. I'm going to share it with this person. Her name's Jenny. Are you sure?
Yes!
There's no podcast section yet for G. It says Tinvec.
Oh, so they haven't made a page yet.
It just means we're in the catalog, so as soon as the catalog launches, we'll already be there.
Take that. All right. Do I need to write to...
Well, it looks like Scott in Slack said that he submitted everything, or I don't know if he submitted everything, but he said he submitted stuff.
Dear Google Godmother,
Sword and Laser is still pending approval.
Could you also take a look at the Frog Pants Network and Sword and Laser, please? We think you're terrific. Thank you.
Also, you rock. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. My wife works at YouTube, so there you go. Let's get that disclosure out.
I'm not over this job yet.
No, I know exactly what that means. That means you're sitting in San Francisco dealing with the folks up in Marin, the folks over in the Presidio, the folks down in Burbank, the folks out in Florida, and wherever the hell else. And you
so
have
the question in anyone's mind going after this job is, A, would it kill your love of Star Wars, in which case the job is not worth it? Or would it just be so awesome to be involved in the world that you would love it despite its inherent disastrous
You would.
description?
I think you would still like the universe and you would still like the content. However, the whole experience might put you off ever having to work with it again, other than just being a fan of the properties.
Yeah. That is a problem. I think there's no better company than like a 3-person company. I think I'm coming to that conclusion.
Well, the key is that is being able to do what you want.
Yeah.
It's funny. Eileen was showing me. Eileen's doing management training.
Oh boy.
And she was showing me this grid she had to fill out, and like you're supposed to circle the things you know you need to improve on, and put a check mark next to the things you know you're really good at. And I think there was a third option for the things in the middle. But there was stuff in there like get stakeholders on board. I'm like, NA doesn't apply. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it applies in the contributor sense, but there were some where like facilitate upper management to make decisions. I'm like, that's me. I'm upper management. Done. I facilitated myself. But yeah, I mean, there was a half dozen of those things. They were like, wow, those are the things you only have to do at a company that's hundreds of people large, versus, you know, what you have to do when it's small. I don't know. You know, small homes, small batch.
Yep.
All of that stuff's that's the wave of the future, right?
Oh no, I just feel like
it's the gig economy, man.
Really, what you need is having a corporate structure that isn't so reliant on personalities to function normally.
Well, yeah, there's a disconnect, and when I say this, don't get me wrong that I think one of these approaches is better than the other, but there's a disconnect between most companies plan as if they will have the right people reporting to the right people in a structure that makes sense. And then most companies hire and move people into structures based on what's around.
right.
And the biggest issue are like you reorg the company and you're like, well, Jane isn't really good with data, but we don't want to let her go because she's so talented. We'll just put her in the data position and we'll morph that position to give her something. And then all of a sudden, like you've messed your structure up for a good cause. But it's like you either need to have an amorphous structure or you need to only put people in jobs that they're good at.
Right. Yeah, that was basically, you just described Jenny's year on the business side at Yahoo.
Mm-hmm. It was the biggest challenge at Tech TV when I was in charge of the web, was like them saying, okay, well, you're only going to get this many positions, and trying to figure out like, okay, let's do this by figuring out who we keep and what they can do rather than what is normally done, which is, okay, we have 15 positions, so we're going to have these positions, and then shoehorning people into them. I'm not saying I did it right, but at least I attempted.
Yeah.
That's his bio novel.
I'm not saying I did it right, but at least I tried. The Tom Merritt story. I mean, I screwed it up, but at least I tried. DTNS, your curated bespoke podcast. Mm-hmm. It's not really bespoke, is it? That would mean I made it just for you.
No.
But I did.
Mm. You did take this just for yourself.
No, just for you.
Oh.
The listener. All right. We out. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Eric Franklin. Talk to you later.